national exhibition called Forever Young last year. And I was one of the people who were lucky to get in that exhibit. And then in addition to showing the paintings in the exhibit, they also recorded a minute of the voice of the artist, and they had to describe what that painting represented in 1 minute to keep one forever young. And what in my life it is my daughter and my connection with her. Oh. You know what, I have these clips too. I should have just put them on, right? Maybe I should, you know. You know what, Alicia, can you grab those two? There's 2 clips right on the floor. It'll make it easier for people and me. Great, thank you. Another aspect of my life that I found difficult to communicate to people is my attitude toward people of different races. Also people of different nationalities and different faiths. I found that I was a very, I didn't know this about myself until I saw myself from the eyes of other people, but I had a lot of inner racism. And I also had prejudice against Jewish people. I mean, these were ridiculous things, but where I grew up, it seemed to be natural to be that way. So I deliberately made an attempt to get rid of it. And that was one of the reasons why I did the play. It's an Italian thing, no, it's a black thing. I deliberately pushed myself to do that and make an expression. And through that, I think I've grown a lot in my attitude. Then I entered into a contest about race and about changes in social justice. And so what I developed, when I first did it, the painting, I wasn't accepted in the exhibit. And I realized why. It didn't really make a point. And so the point I'm making with this is that in order to survive in the world that's coming, you need to be multiracial. I don't mean you have to have different colored skins, but you need to appreciate all races. You need to be all races. You need to be female and male. You can't live a binary existence any longer. You need to be able to, when they come, the name of this piece is When They Come, whether that be the militia, the army, the extraterrestrials, whoever they are that are going to come at some point, you need to be able to grab onto that fence with either a nail-polished hand or a regular hand, and jump the bar, because when they come, it's going to could come from the sky. All right, this is what. Oh, great. Thanks, Alicia. Thank you. Okay, this piece helped me. Be honest about something in my past. In my past, I tried to kill somebody. And I didn't admit that for like 30 years. And what happened was that when I was about 30 years old, I owned a store, and the Crime Victims Association that helped me out asked me to submit a painting. It didn't have to be of any particular kind. And I decided to do this. And then they did a video of it and a presentation. And this is what happened. I had a store, a large store, and in walked this burly guy that seemed like he was a threat. And then I said, oh, let me not make my vibes govern here, my vibe. Let me be. So I just asked him if he needed help and stuff. And he said he was buying, I'll shorten the story, he was buying something for his nephew, he said, and he was picking out something that was probably too expensive for his taste, possibly. And he was a tall, Irish-looking guy that didn't seem, by his look, to be threatening or anything. He wasn't drinking, it didn't smell of alcohol. But then, as I suggested that he buy a bat, and I walked him over to the bats that were in the front of the store near the cribs and stuff, I reached for a small bat for a 12-year-old, a wooden bat, and then what he did is while I reached for the bat, let me do it this way, while I reached for the bat and went down and went up with the bat to give to him, to show him, he took a large bat from the other box, a big aluminum bat, and he came up over my head with that bat, and he came down. So I saw him, I couldn't get out of the way. I saw him come down on my head. I went out, he fractured my head in 6 places, and I nearly died from that. So I was out, and then I woke up to a phone. Short the story, I got to the hospital. They said there was extra hemorrhaging because I was trying to close the business up. I had a very large store with a number of locks on doors and stuff. He didn't take anything from me. I had $900 on me. I had $800 on a desk in the counter. I had another $700 in the register. He didn't do it he didn't rob me. It was a hate crime, because at that time, I moved over from working as a CPA for Price Waterhouse and leading a very structured life to owning my own business, growing my hair long, it's probably this length, and blonde, although you can get away with it back then, you had long hair probably, and a blazer or whatever. I was very thin, so I looked like a girl from a distance, and I wanted to be mistaken for a woman. So this fella, I think, did that for that reason. But I was in denial because I didn't want to admit that somebody didn't like me, because down deep, I was a girl. Because I didn't come out to anybody about that. So instead, I pushed it down, and I made this story up in my head that he did it because he was on drugs. And he did it because he was on drugs and he didn't recognize my look or my sound of my voice or whatever. And so the only way he could deal with it when he saw my head right in front of him was to crush it. In the hospital, they said he hit me twice more when I was down. You know, so he was really trying to kill me. So in any event, because I couldn't deal with it, what I did is I made this story up that he did it because he was on drugs. So what I did is I went out to the drug rehab centers, and at night, my wife would say, "Where are you going?" I'd say, "Oh, I'm just taking a ride." So I would live my life normally during the day. At night, I would go out. I would wait for people to come out of the drug rehab centers. I had a knife underneath the seat of my car, and I was going to find this guy, follow him down the alley, and come up under him and kill him. And the 7th night that I did that, I pulled the car over, the last-ditch effort. I put my hands on the wheel, and I started praying very deeply that God take away that revenge from me, that hate out of me. And so what happened, and I can't explain this, but I do know it happened, some major form of energy, it felt like a big wave at Jones Beach, came through the windshield, no water was in the car, came through the windshield and knocked my head back against the headrest so bad that I had to go to a chiropractor for 2 weeks, you know. But at the same time that happened, out of me like a volcano erupted, came all of the revenge, all of the hatred went out, and what filled in was forgiveness and more faith. And so that was the silver lining. And then I went home, I put the car in reverse, I put the knife in the drawer when I got home. I never even told Lori, my wife. I never told anybody about it until I told people in this group about this maybe about 5 years ago. Anyway, that's maybe too long of a story about that. That's called a baseball bat. I'll make these much shorter. I do a lot of art that connotes gender and being transgender, but it's more than transgender. It's just being non-binary. And being transgender doesn't necessarily mean going from male to female, female to male. It's also existing in the middle. And that's where a lot of us often exist and live, in the middle of things, not on these extremes. So this is, I try to depict that in this painting called Trancarnation. This is a carnation that uses the transgender colors of baby blue, soft pink, and white. Those are the official transgender colors. And it finds this entity, this person that's standing in a field that is divided, seen as divided by most people as male with the blue and female, and with a few that cross over. Like I would be, for example, one of the ones that crossed over to here. Like that's me, or that's me, you know? And yet, she's standing, or he is standing proudly in this divided world. And there are crossing over until finally there's a unification within the flower itself. This is a piece called The Luck Tree, and it recounts something that happened in my life. Sometimes when things happen in my life, like seeing a UFO or something like that, I'll write a poem, write a song, do something, or make a painting. And what happened in this case is, it looks kind of odd because this is a tree that stands in my front yard. And this tree, if you imagine it up here, had all these dying branches. 2 minutes?
You gotta move, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, the branches were laying on the ground, right? They were dying. I had them trimmed. I took the branches, I leaned them up against the tree, I painted them. People drove by and said, oh, it's an interesting piece of art. I never saw anything like that. What is that? What is that? And then I made up a story that ended up coming true. My story is that if you take dead branches and put it up against a living tree, it will nurse the tree back to life. I later found out that the Cherokee believed that, and that in my case, this tree, within 2 years, came completely back to life. So I call it the luck tree, because the last part of that story is that the person who, that's all right, the person whose house it's in front of, or property it's in front of, gets abundant amount of good luck. And that's what's been happening in my life. This last piece is one of my, I have about 15 sculptures. This one is currently sitting at the Pelham Art Center, and this is about this high and about 6 feet wide. This is called Endangered Being Number 2. I think that, and I'm not obviously the only one, I think that human beings are an endangered species if we're not careful, and we must adapt. In this case, what happened, this tiger, you see the tiger legs here? And you see the body, the skinny, because it's malnourished, skinny body of this elephant, right, is adapting. It's growing an extra leg, and it's doing what it has to do to survive, just like we're doing what we have to do to survive. Thanks a lot for your time.